That was Marc Barasch, and quite a background. I mean, he's got his fingers in a lot of environmental pies, and I thought his connection to spirituality was quite thorough, and hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark's been around a while, and it was very interesting to hear, how his own spirituality has evolved to this point of this particular kind of activism. He's not the only one. We've interviewed a number of people
Hmm.
who have become dedicated not just to their own spiritual growth, but to doing good in the world. And it's been really heartening to see. And he's, this business of planting trees and greening the world, re-greening the world is kind of a really interesting phenomenon and worth, I would recommend to our listeners that they go to the website and check out what they're up to.
Right. What was his talk like at the Parliament of World Religions? Was it this year?
Yeah, it was last year in
Hmm.
October. It was a huge gathering of people, and I think it was the last night, the last sort of gathering of everybody, plenary sort of thing. And there were a number of speakers, some of them very well known, and and then there was Mark, and who I was surprised to see, because I know Mark, and there he was on stage. It was quite nice to see because the theme of the Parliament wasn't just let's bring people from different religious groups and spiritual groups together, and there were a zillion concurrent sessions every day of people giving workshops and panels and lectures and so forth. And in these evening gatherings of everybody, it was very oriented around social justice and the environment. So I was very pleased that he had a slot. And it was a very inspiring presentation, about what his organization is doing around the world. There were other people there doing very interesting things, and some of them were interfaith groups, and some of them
Hmm.
were representing their own traditions. But it was very, very uh, inspiring to see that work. One hopes that people follow through afterward.
Right. I mean, I'm glad that he's optimistic, and I'm an optimist by nature. But there's a lot of reasons not to be optimistic about the
Yeah.
future, especially when it comes to the environment. And I think unless it it sinks into people spiritually that it's actually part of their spiritual responsibility for those people that feel they should be spiritually responsible, uh, we could continue to have problems because I think in the past when there was that certainly in the West, a disconnect between one's spiritual life and your responsibility to the environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was people like him that were pioneers that really brought this to the attention of the masses, not just a few
Yeah.
folks.
And I don't know how it happened. Some religious historian is going to have to explain, and I'm sure they have, how it was that the dominant religion of America, the Protestant Christian form of Christianity, got somehow conflated with economic growth and capitalism and prosperity and all that, and a not just an indifference to the national environment, but almost a hostility that it was there to be harvested and cultivated and mined and exploited for
Hmm.
our own material
Well,
benefit.
I
And
think man was, put on top of the pyramid, those religious groups in Christianity, that man came first and foremost, and by man I mean mankind, men and women, and that animals were there to serve them, the environment was there to serve them, and it was like it was a one-way, uh, uh, it was a one-way train. I mean, it didn't go both ways, and he mentioned the Pope. The Pope, at least from the side of Catholicism, has taken a very strong stand now. That no, we are responsible for the world we live in, and I think that's a big change. I think it's very
Yeah,
easy for young people to understand that now, but there's still people from our generation, and certainly from our parents' generation, who don't see it that way.
I know, and who think that any effort to sustain the environment or limit the exploitation of natural resources and so forth is somehow going to impoverish us or stand in the way of their happiness. I mean, it's very odd because every spiritual tradition, I mean, just you read the New Testament, and
Right.
they every tradition, including Christianity, tells us that's not where your happiness comes from. But nevertheless, there it is, and I just fear that it might take more catastrophes
Right.
before people snap out of
Right.
it.
And we still have very much in Christianity the gospel of prosperity. Preachers that,
Yeah, yeah.
God wants you to be rich, God wants you to be wealthy. Now, they're not speaking against
And
the
God wants
environment.
you to send me money.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all around. And sometimes I think we're going forward. But then when I listen to certain political leaders and people in business, I get very discouraged because they aren't looking ahead 7 generations. They're not looking ahead one generation. They're looking at the
Yeah.
here and now, and in the worst possible way, in a very short-sighted way, and
But
future
then some of
generations.
them are. There are exceptions that are very encouraging.
Right.
So, we hope Mark's right in his optimism.
Yeah, but we can only hope. And one encouraging sign, Phil, is that there is a growing, I think, spirituality. We certainly examine it on our program here on our podcast, and that amongst those that are committed to spirituality, I'm seeing across the board from so many different people we've interviewed that as they grow in consciousness, they grow in their concern for and their feelings of responsibility toward others and toward the environment and toward all that is outside of their small selves and really more
Yeah.
plugged into their universal selves.
Yep. That is true. And we hope there's more and more of it.
Right, and I hope we can continue to deliver our listeners a message of hope. And certainly, there's no greater hope than that which comes from one's inner development. Certainly, in my opinion, and that is what we explore on this program.
Yes, and we shall continue.
We shall overcome. All right.
Okay.
All the
All
best,
right,
Phil.
Dennis.
Take care.